This is the plaintiff, Kenneth Potter. He says his next-door neighbor's dog caused him to slip and fall. Then the dog viciously bit him in the hand. The puncture wound was so deep he had to go to the hospital and had to get 6 stitches. The tenant and his dog are a menace to society because the dog roams free, unleashed in the neighborhood. Something has to be done to stop him, and he wants the $5,000 he's owed for medical expenses and pain and suffering. This is the defendant, Ralph. He says the plaintiff slipped and fell on his own while his dogs were outside, and when he went to break the fall, he injured his hand. His dogs didn't bite the plaintiff, and you can tell that by the type of wound it was. The plaintiff is the vicious one here because he made up such lies about his dogs. They were taken away from him, and now his kids are devastated. Owe him $5,000? No way. He's accused of having vicious propensities.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff says his next-door neighbor's dog made him fall and then bit him to boot. But the defendant says the plaintiff's the vicious one and never got bit. It's the case of a dog's life.
Litigants have been sworn in.
Thank you, Douglas. Kenneth Potter,
Good
you
afternoon.
are suing Ralph. You've asked us not to mention your last name for $5,000 in pain and suffering and medical bills as a result of an attack by his dogs on you. Tell me about that.
Correct. Back on last year, September 2nd of 2015, I have a multifamily, and I was at the property.
So you own it, but you rent it out?
I own it, correct, but I rent both units out.
Both units out, okay.
So I was there at the property, got out of the truck, was waiting for the contract to arrive. He hadn't arrived, so I decided to go towards the back of my house to unlock it so I could unlock the front door. As I got out of the truck, I looked down. I was on my driveway. I looked down to make sure that there were no dogs there.
Why? Had you noticed dogs there before?
There's been issues in the past with the dogs.
What has been the issues?
About a year prior, I was on my property. I was in the back of the house, unloading unloading my truck, and the dogs came at me.
Okay. Did
And
you ever tell him about that?
He was there.
And what did he say to you back then?
He's like, "I'm sorry." So I jumped in the bed of my back of my truck to avoid any injury, and he grabbed the dogs.
Okay. All right, so now fast forward to a year later, which is September 2015. You're walking back.
I'm walking down. I'm on my driveway. I'm walking down. I look down to make sure the dogs aren't there. They're not in a cage. He comes out of the back of his house. The dogs are unleashed. He walks
Unleashed or on a leash?
Unleashed.
Unleashed.
They're not leashed. He walks them to the cage. The dogs see me, and they aggressively come after me. As they come at me, I don't know how to protect myself against 2 pit bulls.
They're pit bulls?
They're like a pit bull mix.
What are your dogs?
Rowdy Pits.
Roddy Pits. Okay.
Okay.
Great.
So I go back to defend myself. I'm flailing my arms. I'm screaming at them. And I go back and I
Have either of them bitten you at that point?
No.
Okay. And then what happens?
And then I go back and I trip and I fall. And then I'm sitting on the ground and I'm eye to eye with these dogs.
Oh, my goodness.
And then these dogs are coming at me, so I don't know what to do. I put my hand out, and the dog bites me. I ended up getting 4 puncture wounds on the top of my hand and a cut on the palm of my hand.
Okay. How did the cut on the palm of your hand happen?
The dogs.
The bottom teeth?
Yeah, I would.
Okay.
I'm not sure, but.
Okay.
So at that point, I mentioned to Ralph, like, something like I knew this was going to happen, where your dogs have always been aggressive towards me. I said, I'm going right to the police department. I went right to the police department, which is about a mile away. I went in there. They had an EMT who wrapped up my hand. He said, go to the nearest medical clinic. I went there. They said, the puncture wound is too deep. You need to go to the emergency room.
And you needed stitches?
I needed stitches.
So how many stitches did you get?
It was about 6 stitches.
Do you have the medical reports from any of the places or the hospital report?
Yes.
May
I have
see
this
it?
here. Yes. I have that, and I have a summary of my expenses.
Okay.
Along with
What
all the bills.
happened?
I was taking the dogs out, backyard. I rent. There's a kennel in the backyard. I was bringing him out to the kennel, and he was walking down
Yeah, but why aren't they on a leash if the dogs aren't fenced in, you're walking them unleashed to the kennel?
Right, I did not have him on a leash.
Yeah, but why? That's the law. You can't have your dogs, especially dogs that are gonna, they're Roddy pits, okay? And you know
Right.
because it's happened in the past that they've come after him.
Well,
so
that
what?
that was a little different scenario than what he shared.
It's not. It's really not. It's
my
the
fault.
scenario I fear, and the law fears, which is why you can't have them unleashed. So
They
you
were
have them
unleashed.
unleashed, and then the unthinkable occurs. Well, it could have been so much worse. But so why is it that you haven't made any effort to pay the medical bills in this case?
Well, I saw what I saw.
What'd you see?
All right, like I said, I was bringing the dogs out to the kennel, all right? Walking them out in the backyard. I wasn't in town, I wasn't down the road, his property is the grass and then his driveway. So it's very close. They ran over to bark at him, and then he carried on.
How did he carry on?
He started screaming. He started shaking his hands in front of him, as all they were doing was barking at him. They weren't jumping
What did
on him.
you expect or wish that he would do? Just hold still?
I don't know.
So, are pit bulls more vicious than the average dog?
Not really. They seem to be just fine with me. I never got bit one by one.
You do know that in people's court, it seems like maybe even the majority of dog attacks are pit bull attacks. What do you say?
I think it all comes down to how the owner raises their dog and proper training. I don't think it'd be an issue.
You're nodding.
Well, I also believe that it's also on how the dog was raised. And,
So there's nothing inherently more aggressive or vicious about pit bulls.
not at all. Not at all.
Fair enough. Going inside the courtroom.
What he did was, he started shaking his hands, he started screaming, then he tried to back up, and then he fell backwards on his hands on the driveway.
Okay.
And by that time, I was able to get over there, and I called the
Are you
dogs.
suggesting the dogs didn't bite him?
I did see him bite him.
Okay.
I didn't see him bite him. I have 2 dogs. Since then, I had to get rid of both dogs because he quoted saying there was a bite. They had to be quarantined, they were given restraining orders, and I had to get rid of both dogs.
Okay, when you say they were giving restraining orders, what do you mean?
Through the town, through the animal.
What was the town insisting through the restraining orders? What did they say to you you had to do?
They had to be leashed at all times
Ooh,
with
imagine that.
muzzles, and I think it was even if they they were found loose, that there would be a misdemeanor or
Right.
arrest for.
Yeah.
for-
In other words,
right.
that's the law,
Right.
and you need to
Right.
obey it.
Right.
Yeah. All right. And so you got rid of the dogs how?
I placed them in with other people,
Okay.
because I only rent. It's not like I could fence in the yard or.
No, but you could use a leash like other
Right.
people
I-
do,
I do.
right?
I do use a leash.
Yeah, you didn't have to get rid of the dogs. You just had to be a good dog owner. See, you're right. The dogs were acting as dogs. What I can't have are people acting as dogs. I can't have you not caring whether your dogs get loose and your answer being, well, you should have manned up and just stood there quietly and nothing would have happened. No, because when 2 Roddy pits are running at you, you may have a very reasonable reaction. If what he did was start smacking them in the face, that's not a reasonable reaction. But if what he did was this, he's
No,
gonna
he
fall.
was.
And even if the dogs hadn't bitten him, the fact that the dogs being loose and coming at him and barking at him, if that's the reason he fell, and it is, because he wasn't gonna fall if your dogs weren't loose, you'd still be responsible for those bills. But in any event, I am looking to see if there's an actual bill that says anything about a bite. I'm curious.
He showed me his hand that day, and there was blood in the middle of his hand. There were no
Do you have
punctures.
pictures?
There was
Yeah.
no
Oh, wait,
punctures.
show me pictures.
Just come up.
Your exam
Stay right there. Stay-
shows you have been bitten by an animal. Okay. All right. Never mind, I've got him. Did you pursue this with the police? Obviously, yes. You went to the police station. That's
Yeah.
where they bandaged you up. What did the police end up doing? Oy. Yeah, those look
Police-
like puncture wounds. That's pretty nasty, doesn't it? Hello?
I'm looking at it.
Yeah, that's your fault. And when you talk about how you had to give away the dogs and your children were crushed, that's your fault too.
I know,
Just
they
put a
weren't-
leash on.
I said that. I didn't have
Okay,
them
well,
on a
and
leash.
look at the puncture wounds. It looks like the dog did bite. Jeez. All right. Based on the medicals that you have shown me and your claim for pain and suffering, I'm going to award you what I think is a reasonable amount. You're asking for $75 for lunches and dinners and $35 for lawn mowing. What's that about?
I'm a single dad,
Okay.
and I've got a little daughter,
Uh-huh.
and you know, I couldn't like cook. I couldn't, you know. So I ended up going out to dinner with her because I couldn't cook. I couldn't clean because my hand. I'm a right dominant hand.
Right.
So it was really hard for me to cook and to clean. And so my attorney that I had hired at that time said, keep a track of all your expenses. So I did that, and then cutting the grass, I asked somebody to cut the grass for me once.
Okay. Do you have those bills?
I don't have
Didn't your
those.
attorney tell you to keep track of all those expenses?
Yeah, he did. I didn't
Okay,
keep
no
track.
proof, no money. All right,
Okay,
but
I
I
keep
do
track of
believe
that.
that there's certainly pain and suffering involved in that. I'm ordering the defendant to pay the plaintiff $3,000. That's my verdict. Good luck, folks.
So the plaintiff prevails to the tune of $3,000. Ralph, the defendant, has come out of the courtroom. Are you at all surprised by the judge's decision? No. How are your kids now? Without the dogs, you're going to get some other dogs?
I'm not sure.
Maybe you should get some more friendly dogs next time, if you do. Okay?
Thank you.
You're a man of few words. All right, thank you very much. Here comes Mr. Potter. You were getting a little emotional in there.
It's tough. I love my little daughter, and a lot of times I bring my daughter with me to that property.
Yeah.
So I always think of if she was with me at that time when the
Could've been
dog
really
attacked,
bad.
it could have been my daughter being attacked.
Yeah,
So I hope all dogs should be leashed.
no question about it. Sorry you had to go through this. Congratulations, you didn't get $5,000, but $3,000 certainly a help, right?
It helps. It covers some of the bills. Yeah.
All righty, thank you very, very much.
Okay, thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay. Well, there's a case where leash laws really are important. Don't you agree, Harvey?
Yeah, Doug, I mean, look, the leash laws are super important, but I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about pain and suffering. In this case, the plaintiff he got all choked up when he was talking about the fact that he couldn't cook for his daughter because he was hurt, and you really saw him kind of grieving. That's the kind of stuff, because it felt so authentic, that it actually does help when it comes to awarding damages for pain and suffering.